Patric Young, a key member of the 2014 Florida Gators Final Four team, joins us today. The 2014 SEC Defensive Player of the Year is with us to talk about the 24-25 Gator basketball team. Can the Gators go all the way? What's stopping them? He'll break it all down for us in just a moment. Gator Nation, welcome back to the In All Kinds of Weather forecast. I'm your host, Neil Schulman. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment with your thoughts, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts. All that stuff helps us bring more great content to Gator Nation. Great content like we've got today with Patric Young. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, got to quickly shout out our sponsor. The In All Kinds of Weather forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it is savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. That is 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. As I mentioned, Patric Young graces our show with his presence today, a 2014 All-SEC selection. Patric, one of the things I'm sure you're most proud of is being a 2014 academic All-American, a 3-time SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. Clearly, not only could he play basketball, also a pretty smart guy, and that's why we've got him on our show today, because we want to hear his thoughts. So let's start hearing him. Patric, you're so gracious as to be able to fit us in in between your busy schedule. How's it going? And thanks for joining our show.
It's going well, man. I really appreciate you. You know, this is quote unquote my time of the year when we're in March Madness. This period of the season, crazy that we've gotten here already, and we're getting to the survive and advance part. And the Gators are in a fantastic position. So I really love watching this team. I love it. I know I enjoyed watching the team last year because offensively they were better than what we had for a while. And then like this year, now that we know they have a legitimate shot, it's so fun to watch this team. And of course, those discussions and debates come up, my team versus this team and what that will look like. And I give the credit, the conversation of that or the meat of that conversation, Neil, is just this simple fact. When we had our best team, my last season at the University of Florida, we went 18-0, won the SEC, won the tournament, made it to the Final Four. Just thinking about the SEC, only 3 teams made the tournament that year. Us, Kentucky, Tennessee. It's a potential chance. We know that at minimum 10 teams are from the SEC of the 16, but it's being thrown out there that maybe even 13 teams will make the tournament, which is pretty wild to think about. So the competition level we had was not as great as this team, but I'm still going to lean on us because we did have a better defense than this team does right now. I know that for sure, but they shoot the heck out of the ball.
They do, and they do a lot of things well, and we'll talk about all that in just a second. But we like to start our interviews with guests or conversations with guests with something called the lightning round, just letting Gator fans get to know you a little bit better. And the first question is always the same. Patric, you're a Gator great. You didn't start as a Gator great. You had to go through a recruitment process to choose your school. How did you become a Florida Gator?
Gosh. Well, one thing that's important to know is, yes, Coach Donovan was recruiting me, but the lead recruiter was Shaka Smart, who is currently at Marquette. Shaka Smart, he did not end up coaching me. Even though he recruited me, he ended up getting a head coaching job at VCU. Then we know he went to Texas, and then he's now currently at Marquette. But I just remember with my recruiting process when it blew up, it's my 10th grade summer. I had zero interest at that time. Zero eyes. JU and UNF, those two North Florida schools were looking at me. But as soon as there was a camp up in Philadelphia that I went to called it used to be called ABCD camp, but now it was called Reebok U. And at this camp, my mindset was, and this was at that time, this is before you got the EYBL, the Nike League. This was a top tier tournament. Every top player in the country was going there. The year previously, John Wall was John Wall in his prime. Goodness gracious, Neil, he was unbelievable. Like left hand and right hand dunking. It was, anyways. I dominated there, and my recruiting process just exploded. Before I got home after that thing, my mailbox, my parents' mailbox, was full of letters because we weren't really big social media or contacting players like that. So coaches sent a lot of letters in the mail, handwritten and just random facts. And man, it was so cool. And a few weeks later, Billy Donovan is on campus at my high school, wanting to talk to me and tell me about coming to the University of Florida. Coach Donovan, he really didn't need to do much for it was kind of preordained, Neil, that I was going to be in the orange and blue.
I absolutely love that. Every Gator that we ever talk to has a great origin story with his or her Gator roots. Yours is no different. I love the idea that you dominate John Wall, who we all know
I did
now.
not dominate. I did not dominate John Wall. No, 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 no. I know that's not. I
No?
don't want
Okay,
that.
set the record
He
straight. Go ahead.
he was there. He was. If I dominated, then I don't know what you want to call him because he was just absolutely unstoppable.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. You and John Wall, I think, is fair to say, took over the spotlight of this camp, among other people. Maybe we won't
Yeah,
we
that's
won't throw
fair.
that shade at him.
That's
Um,
fair. That's fair.
Although, yeah, you and John both obviously had very, very successful basketball careers. Yours coming at the University of Florida for 4 seasons, and let's talk about that a little bit more. Your favorite memory as a Florida Gator, I'm sure, is going to be something related to the time you finally break through and get to the Final Four. You lose in the Elite Eight to Butler, a heartbreaker. You lose in the Elite Eight again the next year, maybe even more gut-wrenching fashion to Louisville. Michigan just blows your doors off, and then finally, in your fourth try, you get there, you beat Dayton, you're in the Final Four. What is that post-game locker room like, and what does that mean to you to cut down the nets, to have that little memento, but also to have that memory of finally getting there? Only 1 in 5 times that the Gators have ever been to the Final Four.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. I remember it being on the bus and have the nets and the hats on and get them on the court. But like, I think just that whole year for us, Neil, it really is hard to pinpoint one moment. Obviously, that's a huge part of getting through that door and making it to the Final Four. But just that whole year was special, man. Like, I love the memories of Scotty, Will, Casey, and myself. Like we were still nerds, man. Like we still played Call of Duty and racing, like in the hotels, and we still went out together. We hung out together. We did. So we have so many memories on football game days to after our games, from coming back after the Final Four to our last game on the court, and kissing the court before and stepping off together. Like there's unlimited memories, man, of that season. It's impossible to pinpoint it to one thing.
Fair, fair. I mean, you go 21-0 against the SEC, and then you make it to the Final Four. It is hard to pick just one. Um, I'm sure that you are going to be able to tell all your friends and relatives for the rest of your life if you want to, if you're that bold that you want to drop the humility that I know was such a big part of your life. If you want to drop that for just a second and say, yeah, I was part of history at Florida, Final Four is definitely going to be what comes to mind first. So, next question in the lightning round is something that we ask everyone: football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever, all have uniform combinations that they like, that they don't like. I know that you had some alternates that you got to play with that are not around anymore. You had, I think, the silver, you had the black outlook. What was your favorite to wear, and what is your favorite now?
We never played in black.
You never had the black.
We never played in. I think we may have had it, but we never played in black. Coach Donovan hated the black jerseys because we always lost. So we started playing in the orange, the bright orange. That was the one that really we won. We played really well in orange for some reason. So really enjoyed that one. The gray we had the alternate there. That's not a good memory either because we
Yeah.
played against Tennessee,
Tennessee. Yep.
and that game was when Will broke his foot, and I had to play 38 minutes that game. Jarnell Stokes kicked my bleep. Uh, I mean, he had a sub. I had no sub. It was me. I can't. I was not built for playing 38 minutes a game. It just wasn't me. But anyways, yeah, that was. In looking back now, like it's crazy that we had uniforms that are comparable to the championship back-to-back teams. You look back, gosh, like those uniforms are a little too baggy, and then a few years later, under Mike White, they had uniforms that looked like just a tank top. The stuff was now the uniforms they have on are perfect size. The shorts are where they need to be. They're not too small. The tightness is perfect because you don't want a bag. It just doesn't look as good. So I'm looking back. I'm like, gosh, what were we thinking with these uniforms here? They're way too baggy.
Good to know. I have very vague memories of seeing like the baggy shorts. I guess I was paying more attention to just the aesthetics of it and then how you guys played on the court, but that's something that a player would know that I wouldn't. So that's one of the many reasons why we're glad we've got you on today, Pat.
Well, the thing about why I hate them so baggy is that if you sweat a lot and then it starts like collecting on your knee, and then your
Um,
shorts are just sticking to you all weird. So it's just a weird feeling.
gotcha. Okay, well. With that said, the Gators obviously have a lot of success in basketball. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Gators like to call themselves the everything school. And that term, I think, has been around since you were on campus. And I'll make you feel young right now. You played from 2011 to 2014, which wasn't that long ago. Kevin O'Sullivan was dominating in baseball, getting the Gators to Omaha then. Tim Walton dominating in softball then. Mike Holloway, the aka Mouse, was winning championships then. So it wasn't that long ago that you were on campus and Florida was dominating as they are now. So I guess a two-part question. Number one, what did it mean to you to be walking campus at that time when the Gators were so dominant in so many different sports? And what did it mean and what does it mean to you today to know that you played such a big part in that?
I guess the first answer the first question. Um, I wish looking back now, I think you appreciate it more. Um, there were some amazing athletes, male and female, at the school at my time. Amazing teams from like I really got a chance to know the lacrosse players, our girls there with lacrosse, and come to watch that sport. There were some soccer girls as well that I got to come to know and see and support. The volleyball team was always very good with Mary Wise. Um, you don't. I guess as athletes, sometimes you're so self-centered. Human beings, we know we are, and just thinking about ourselves instead of like always noticing the atmosphere and environment of like being surrounded by greatness around you, like gymnastics. Like there's so many gymnasts that are. 1 second. Ooh, that felt good. Get a good sneeze out. But there's so many girls at the time that were just unbelievable and paved the way for where these programs are now. And I do remember, I remember greatly that South Carolina had Florida baseball's number for some years at that time. Florida had some. It was 1 year I think it had 10 pros, and South Carolina somehow got Florida in the World Series. It was just something about them doggone buzzards, man. Just would got
Yeah.
our guy Kevin O'Sullivan, but Tim Walton and what he's done, I can't wait to watch him and support them. Congratulations to Tim Walton that just got his 1,000th win, and then now, I mean, the golf team just won a championship a few years ago. Like, it is really cool being a part of a program where, whatever season is going on, that the Gators are in the top 25, if not the top 10 somewhere.
Yeah, golf getting on the board a couple years ago. Men's tennis, Ben Shelton,
Ben
Sam
Shelton.
Rivas.
Whew.
Yeah, those guys, Andy Andrade, Duarte Valle, I had a lot of fun. That tennis was my sport growing up, so I had a lot of fun finally getting to watch a Gators tennis team that was that dominant. A men's tennis team. The women had been doing it under Roland Thornquist, but the men's tennis team finally joining the club a couple years ago as well. So let's move on to basketball specifically. That was your sport, and that is what we're here to talk about primarily today. So before we get into the main crux of the episode, I've got to ask you a question that I battle with some of my. I'm from New Jersey. Unfortunately, I'm friends with a lot of UConn fans, so I have to go back and forth with them about, is Florida a blue blood? Is Florida an elite basketball program? Well, the answer is it's 8 schools that have more national titles than Florida. That's Villanova, Kansas, Duke, Indiana, North Carolina, Kentucky, UCLA, and UConn. That's it. That is the entire list of schools with 3 or more. Florida, of course, with 2. Florida's been to 5 Final Fours. Only 17 schools have more. So I know we just talked about Florida being the everything school. Do you think it is fair to call Florida Gator basketball an elite program?
Yes, as far as being elite, but not a blue blood. Not quite. I think one more. I love what you brought up there. I think one more championship puts Florida in that cat. And dude, it just sucks because like you said, we at least 3 out of the 4 years. Michigan, they just Nick Stauskas, he was on our scouting report, obviously, but he went crazy in that game out of nowhere. But we had an opportunity to at least 3 years of my 4 be in a Final Four, instead of just one. Against Butler and Louisville, and I think that I say I regret, or it sucks because Florida would possibly be in that conversation of legitimately being a blue blood, having gone to more Final Fours, like just so close. But hey, who's never been to a Final Four? Tennessee.
Tennessee's
They've
not,
never Tennessee has never been to one. Rocky Top has never been played in a Final Four.
nope.
What a game! What a crazy shot Jemai Mashack made
Yeah.
against Alabama. How does Nate Oates not call a timeout?
So I didn't
How?
see that live. I was in Condren watching Florida Miami baseball. I heard about it. My phone blew up with text. You got to see what happened in that game. You got to see what happened there. And then I watched the replay on YouTube, and yeah, how did they not call a timeout there? But Tennessee and Alabama are relevant to the conversation today because we're going to be talking about Florida potentially getting a national championship path laid out for it in a couple of weeks. We're going to see the selection show on March the 16th. Gators in contention for a 1 seed. We're going to talk about that in 1 second, though. Patrick, we talk sports on the show and we love our sports, but the human issue comes first. And I know Gator fans everywhere, we're all horrified to hear the news of what happened to you a couple of years ago. So I just wanted to get an update there. How are you doing? How is everything going for you physically? And where is the overall health of Patric Young these days?
Uh, I'm pretty good. I'm in a decent place. Can always can improve. All of us can always improve. A part of healing, when you've had issues that I've had, whether it's battling infection or something that you're trying to, it's just going to take time. Like tearing an ACL, you can't rush or speed the process up. You can definitely slow it down with choices and decisions you make. So it's discipline that's required, from the way how I'm eating to how I'm moving to how, like, all that stuff matters. So it's just tough when you're I say a mover and shaker, whatever. I like to do things. I like to go and see friends and work and impact. So there's not say a struggle, but there's a battle. There's a wrestling with priorities at times where opportunities may come and get in the way of something that's important with my health. So being able to say no at the right time, and also, but I mean, I feel pretty good. It's just a process. It is just a slow, timely process of getting healthy. And the goal is 1% at a time. so making the small steps, small progress towards the right direction. So that's what I've been doing and going to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, definitely glad to hear that things are going well. We were all very scared a couple years ago. Obviously, a lot of time has elapsed since then. You're well past that point, but it is good to hear some positive news on the Patric Young health front. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I mean, I'm working. I'm working. So if I wasn't able to work, then
yeah.
uh that would mean I was be struggling more. I mean, of course, there's still days where all of us don't feel 100%, but can you give 100% of what you're feeling? If you only got 50, half in the tank, sometimes just showing up and putting on a smile is enough to get you through.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. You got to give 100% of what you have, whether or not you have 100% in the tank. You have to give everything that you personally have that day. So I like that analogy, and I think Gator fans are gonna be very happy to hear that about you. Definitely,
Sweet,
definitely important to keep the mentals up. Um,
sweet, absolutely.
so yeah, let's talk Gator basketball while you're here. Florida, I think, is in a position now where we were only dreaming of them being a couple short years ago, especially after the first season of Todd Golden. Now Florida obviously is a national championship contender, and to me, it starts with a guy who I think I don't know that I've ever said this before, but has a real case to be an All-American, despite the fact that he did not start for most of the year, and that's Thomas Houck. And he does it a lot of the same way that you did, with effort, with boxing out, with just finding a way to get his hand in there and maybe just volleyball set the ball back out for a second opportunity. Obviously, he's not the same position as you. He's not a true center, but he does remind me a lot of you with the energy and the hustle that he displays, especially on the glass to extend possessions for Florida. So, as someone who did a lot of that in your day, can you speak to just how valuable it is for the Florida Gators to have a guy like that on the floor?
Well, I can tell you from experience of not having a guy like that, or at least not having the depth that Florida has in the front court. It was Will you get and myself mostly in the front court during my tenure. DeMontre Harris, he had sickness and just wasn't able to work things out. So, Jake the Snake would have been the next guy that comparable, but he wasn't starting, he wasn't playing a lot, he wasn't as tall or as skilled as someone like Thomas Houck that can push it up the floor, can knock his shot down, has uh, just great feel. You can tell he has great feel for the game. Unselfish. Sometimes I do wish he and Alex Condon would be a little bit more selfish with because I think those two, when they get the ball closer near to the paint, they can score or they just make the right play. Those guys typically seem to make the right play. So, I hope, you see Hulk and Condon, but I have no idea. This is not speculation, but, this is just me just thinking uh, of what those guys' future is going to look like. You hope that they're going to be in the uniform, get a uniform one more year. They're both really good and have great prospects for making it to the NBA, I think. So it's just fun to watch these guys' journey, man. They love being Gators, so it's really easy to be fans of those guys.
Definitely. Having met Thomas Houck and seeing the love that he has for this school is definitely something special. And just more generally, because I shouted out Thomas Houck, but it's obviously a lot more than him. You just touched on the depth. Alex Condon, Micah Hanlogton now, who's just come back, Ruben Chinyelu, Sam Alexis has given us some minutes, and even the guards at points pitch in with the rebounding and giving Florida second possessions. So with that said, there's a saying that I like to use. I don't know how much you'll like it as a former player, but there's a saying that I like to use that Florida won this game or they won that game in the offseason. They won the game before it ever tipped off, meaning Florida importing Micah Hanlogton from Marshall was the coaching move that won this game because he's essentially a crane who could just get rebounds for you, or the evaluations of Houck and Condon that he made from the luxury of his office in the offseason wasn't as much of an X's and O's coaching job that won Florida a specific game, maybe a hypothetical game. I'm picking at random. That Golden just did the work to identify and land those guys, and then on game day just sat back and reaped the rewards of landing those guys and evaluating them on game day. And of course, that goes for the entire team, not just the front court guys. You have the scorers like Richard and Clayton and Martin and Aberdeen, and at the same time, Florida has clearly gotten better since they were or since November. There's obviously been some game to game as well as in-game adjustments that Golden has made. So I'll ask the question this way. What percent of Florida's success this season do you attribute to in-season and in-game adjustments and coaching moves by Todd Golden? And what percent do you attribute to Todd Golden's off-season moves where he amassed this group of guys in the first place?
I think I'd put a higher percentage on the off-season moves because there was we know with the way the transfer portal is now, it's not just being able to get players, but being able to retain guys. You know, he was able him being able to retain Walter Clayton and Will Richard. It was huge. We knew those guys were going to have a great year. After what we saw last season, we just didn't know like how good and exactly what that was going to look like. The addition of Elijah Martin was big time. Still, you're not sure like how's it things going to work out because just like in professional sports, you don't always hit on free agents on training camp doesn't always necessarily mean it. The Jaguars had a wonderful training camp this past season and had an awful season. So it's not always an exact formula, but I think Coach Golden, because he says it, man, I want guys that want to be Gators. Like if I don't care about, necessarily all their status, I want guys that want to be here because then you can work with that. So I think, after that, then you attribute less of a percentage, but a very important percentage of the coaching, the in-game. Not always as many in-game moves that Coach Golden makes. I'll say a big one was when they put on the press against South Carolina earlier this year when they were on the road. Like that was an obvious one. Sometimes I wish he would change some things up sooner, just to mix things up with, and it's always like you can always go back to man, but it's just like a lot of teams don't see a lot of zone, and with the length and size that the Gators have, oh my gosh, you put us out there in a 1-3-1 or a 2-3 zone. And I wouldn't. The weakness of playing zone is the matchups for rebounding are off, so that's your vulnerability. But you force teams sometimes to get stagnant. But the team, as you said, they have improved so much from November to where we are now, which is all you can really ask for. You want your team, your program to continue to improve as the season is going on.
Well, you talk about the zone defense that Florida deploys. Another thing that I don't know if I like or not is that when Florida goes zone and teams hit a couple threes, the Gators maybe stay in it a little bit too long and let the other team keep puncturing it a little bit longer than they probably should. Is that something that concerns you?
Well, what concerned me was looking at the Georgia loss, man. Like it was obvious to Ron Slay and myself that our pick and roll defense was way too casual, and we were playing a drop defense where on the pick and roll, the big man, let's say Ruben Chinyelu, instead of being at the level of the screen, he's 3, 4, 5 steps back. So you put so much pressure on your guard to get over that screen and to chase, and then coming downhill for the big, he could be playing 2 against 1 for a second between the ball and his man that's rolling. And it just was like, man, can the coaches not see that defense is killing us? And they ended up making adjustments later on, but that first 10 minutes, as we know, against Georgia was awful basketball. It was an outlier of basketball for the Gators.
Yeah, that wasn't good. I had a work event that night, so I had it streaming on my phone. And I just saw the score kept getting worse and worse and worse, and then I stopped and I watched a couple minutes, and it wasn't great. And to their credit, they came back and made a game of it, which I guess does speak to what this team can do. I wouldn't say that I love the ability to come back from massive deficits. I wouldn't. I don't love the I don't love the fact that they're forced to do that, but it is an ability that they have. We saw them do that against LSU. We saw them do that, albeit in a loss to Missouri. We've seen them do it even against Kentucky. They were down a good number and they came back and made a game of it. But let's talk more about the offense for a minute. Florida obviously has a very different type of offense than what we're used to seeing under Mike White. It's a bit of a scorer heavy offense in that you have guys who can go do a number of different things. Will Richard is able to create his own shot now more than he used to be able to create his own shot. Walter Clayton is a guy that can take it to the hole. He can shoot if he has to. You've got Elijah Martin and Denzel Aberdeen. Your guards can score in a number of different ways. And then, of course, you've got your rebounders, the guys who, whatever set play you draw up doesn't work, whatever you're supposed to be trying to do fails because the shot just misses, whatever. You have a guy in Alex Condon, a guy in Chinyelu, a guy in Thomas Hauk, a guy in Micah Hanlock who can just get the rebound and either put it back up and in himself or kick it back out and reset. What about that do you think is so effective for Florida? What is the most effective part of this offense for Florida? And do you see this as something that can wear down the elite teams on a consistent basis, not just doing it once like we saw against Auburn, but doing it twice in the span of 3 days in the NCAA
Yeah.
tournament?
Probably the most impressive part is just the how fat the pace, off of a miss or a make, and getting the pace to not just get a shot up, but to get their shot up, to be aggressive enough to not let what just happened on the other side of the court affect their ability to still play their game. It's an unselfish team, man. It's a really unselfish team. When one guy gets it going, like Will has, they keep letting them go. They keep trying to find a way instead of, sometimes Walter does take some bad ones sometimes. He does throw up some that you're just like, man, that was really early in the clock. Walt, you could have held that a little bit longer. But for the most part, man, they take some really good shots. And I wish they would get the ball into the post a little bit more. Like when Ruben Chinyalu's got somebody on his back under the basket, there's not a much better, easier offensive play than, hey, he's just bigger and stronger than you. Let me just give him the ball when he's 1 foot in front of the basket. But I think this team is as good as they are. They're really smart. They're really smart, really aware, and the fact that they got on. I think I've seen Walter's gotten on Tommy Hawk a few times because there's, sometimes the bigs Condon and himself will want to push it up the floor and maybe not make the right pass or something. But these guys hold each other accountable, and that's what's impressive. As they just want to win. You just see it. This is a team of guys that just want to win and do whatever it takes to do so. No one cares about the spotlight.
Yeah, well, you love that, especially on a team where you have guys 8, 9 strong who can come out and they can execute and they can produce for the Florida Gators. They can get rebounds, they can get points, they can take the ball away. We've seen Florida's defense. Sometimes they give up a lot of points, but we've seen them be able to play pickpocket and just take the ball away and create some transition offense for themselves as well.
Yes.
Florida has a weird situation, I would say, from its guards where they can be really hot and they can be really cold. I mean, for example, Will Richard was scoreless against LSU, exactly 0 points. He comes back in the next 2 games and scores a combined 55. And then he's
Yeah.
got a situation where he's got two in the loss to Tennessee. He's got all of 2 points. Very next game, bounces back, scores 21 against Vandy. And you're going to have that. It's basketball. Guys are going to have good nights. You're going to have bad nights. You're going to have games where Elijah Martin and Walter Clayton just don't do a whole lot for you. They don't produce anything. And then you're going to have guys who come in their place and pick up the slack. That's when a Denzel Aberdeen can be expected to step in and take over the game, or Will Richard when Martin and Clayton are cold. So, with that said, though, is that something that's concerning for you that Richard in particular, or someone else, let's say Richard, Clayton, and Martin, just go cold in the NCAA tournament, picking the worst possible time to do that? Is that something that worries you, or do you think that a bad night from Richard, or a bad night from Martin, or a bad night from Clayton is going to have someone else step up for them and take control of the game?
Yeah, they've done that before. I don't, I think Florida has shown like Walter doesn't always have to have his best game ever for them to win. I don't think we've seen occurrences where all three guys of the main guards are having bad game. One of those guys is always going to be doing something and then Denzel hasn't been playing great off the bench these last few 2 or 3 games, but he's always going to be a weapon because his job is to come in and score like that's it. And with the biggest thing though, I think the bigs are what's going to keep Florida in games. I think their rim protection and rebounding. Mike is doing a great job on the offensive glass, as is Tommy Houck and Condon. So I think this roster just has the depth to cover sins, man. Just uh, to get over the possibility of one thing not going right and that not being a catastrophic thing. Like, I think they can find, as long as they can be aware of not trying the same exact things. But this team, like, they move the ball. They move the ball. They defend. It's just like going to the Georgia game, the game was 12-0. If there's no 12-0 start, let's say that's 12-6 or 12, I think that changes the entire outcome of that game, because then they ended up going trying to come back from 26 down and came back and took the lead, which is crazy. But you don't want to put yourself in that position so early in the game where you're fighting back and clawing back.
You talk about masking sins, I believe you put it.
Yes.
Exactly how many sins can this Gator front court mask with its rebounding abilities?
With his offensive rebounding abilities, let's 1 second. Well, I keep sneezing, man.
You're good.
Whew, good one again.
Looking
Think
a little
about this.
light.
Offensive rebounding is, especially let's just stick with offensive rebounding, and I'll do offensive rebounding. You give yourself uh, another opportunity to get the ball, to get a good shot up. A lot of threes that are inside out. That's typically what you want. 2 feet in the paint, get the ball out to your shooter. What better way? 2 feet in the paint on offensive rebound. You got a guy sitting out there is wide open. Less turnovers. Typically means you're getting shots up if you're able to get to the glass. And then, when you're fighting in the glass, you get some fouls on other teams that are, maybe they're not boxing out as well. And then on the defensive side, obviously every possession stops with a rebound, or it converts when another team gets the possession. So if you're limiting whoever to one shot per possession, not letting them, get a bunch of offensive rebounds, I think defensively, I mean, it puts you in a place where if they have to know that they have to take a quality shot or they're not getting another one. So it really puts a lot of pressure on opposing offense.
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties, y'all, but we're back. Here we go. Patric's back. We're here. Going to keep talking about the Gators for just a minute more. We're going to talk about this team's NCAA tournament run chances, but let's start with the fact that the NCAA tournament is just wild. I mean, the Florida Gators do a lot of things well. We've talked about the offense. We've talked about how the Gators can probably get a little bit better on the defensive side, but the rebounding can mask a lot of sins. But there is just a larger number of crazy early round upsets that are happening more and more these days. I mean, you think about, we're Duke. We're not going to lose to Lehigh. We're Kentucky. We're not going to lose to St. Peter's. We're Virginia. We're not going to lose to UMBC or Purdue. We're not going to lose to Fairleigh Dickinson. Where even is that? Well, it's happening more and more and more these days. For half a century, no 16 ever beat a 1. It's happened twice in the last 6 tournaments now with UMBC and Fairleigh Dickinson. Up until 2011, only 4 15 seeds had ever beaten 2 seeds. Since 2012, there have been 7. 4 of them reached the Sweet 16, and St. Peter's made it all the way to the Elite Eight. So, whereas 15, 20 years ago, you'd think that's crazy. There's no way this Gator team's not going to have to worry about its first round opponent, whatever. They're going to just make it to the round of 32 as a given, and then you start the tournament from there. But it's happening nowadays. It's an actual question. And even your team, the Final Four team in 2014, people don't remember that Albany game was a little closer than it probably should have been for a little while. So, the question is specifically talking about how Florida doesn't necessarily have the strongest defense, and it does have scoring droughts, and the free throw issues can be a little concerning as well. Do you think there's any way that this Gator basketball team is susceptible to getting upset in the first round?
Yeah, I mean every team is, but anything happens when it's one game. One game, anything can happen. I The only games that I've seen that Florida has gotten jumped out on or surprised has been against really good teams. So I haven't seen them against really bad team, like a really bad team, jump out on them. Lost to Missouri, lost to who was it?
Georgia.
Lost to Georgia, and there's one more that
Well, they lost to
I'm blanking
Kentucky, but
on.
that was a good
It was
team.
on the road.
And
That was a
Tennessee.
good team. Good team. Yeah, there you go. Tennessee. Yeah, all those games on the road. Neutral site, I think, is going to be a lot different. Um, but I mean, this team is just completely different than the last two that Florida's had, and these are all players that Coach White wanted to, or not Coach White, that Coach Golden wanted. That he made this roster. Yeah, it's a chance, man. There's always a chance that a team can get. Like, I mean, look at Norfolk State beat a really good Missouri team. My
Sophomore
sophomore
year.
year,
That was
my
when
sophomore
Florida was a
year.
7 seed, and you had Brad Beal on that team. That's right.
Yep. So that was kind of crazy, man. When you think about it.
Yeah, so I think we can all agree it's not particularly likely that Florida's going to wind up losing to a Norfolk State or a Quinnipiac or an American or Cleveland State or anything like that. But it does happen, especially when teams don't shoot well and they don't get rebounds. I do think Florida has the rebounding to be able to avoid that pitfall. The free throws, though, that is a
Yeah,
concern. It happens to a lot of teams that they just don't shoot well over a course of a game. But and every time it happens, I have to laugh because like there are people in my mentions on Twitter that go, I demand Todd Golden put them at the free throw line and make them hit 53 free throws before they can go home. And I know if it were that simple, he would have done it months ago. But it is a concern. So how does Florida fix that heading into the tournament?
you have these guys. They got to just keep working on it. It's got to, free time, any free time you have in the gym before practice, after practice, because yeah, I think they were 15 of 29 against Georgia. It just wasn't good. Uh, you can't have you're not going to get a team that's going to be 80%, but 10% higher. That wins games, especially in crunch time. I think and you expect the guards. Elijah Martin had missed two or three in that game. Will Richard missed some. Walter Clayton missed some free throws. Like, yeah, those guys got it's and I'm one to talk, but it's something you have to at least at minimum put some work in on a consistent basis, no matter what time period you are in the season.
Well, whatever people want to say about you as a free throw shooter, you did hit some big ones. You hit a couple of big ones
I
against
did.
Gulf Coast in the Sweet 16. That was big. I mean, Gulf Coast had a lead in that game. Dunk City, Andy Enfelds, Brett Comer, Chase Fueler, they're all thinking, oh, we're going to go to the Elite Eight for the first time ever. Gators come back down the stretch. You salted away with some free throws. So big to note that when the going gets tough, you gotta hit the free throws that matter most. You did that. Your team did that. This Florida team, now obviously Georgia on the road, would have liked to have won. Clearly not the same stakes as that though. So we can't say that we know that one way or another. I guess that's one thing we're just gonna have to wait and see about. The defense though, that's the other thing that has me a little concerned. Florida does let opposing teams get hot. I don't know that there's a lot you can do when a team is going to shoot, like, what was it, 79% from three for a half like Georgia did. But then, you have the Missouri game, you have the LSU game. Kentucky puts 106 on you. Even the FSU game, they come back a little bit. Florida seems to take his foot off the gas a little at the end there. What do you think the fix is for the defense? And or I guess I could ask it in a different way. How does Florida get more consistent good defense down the stretch?
I think it's there is some level of accountability there. I know Coach Golden. He's not a huge defense guy, but he does obviously see that they need to have improvement. Um, you got the size. You got it. It starts, and who says this all the time? You got to guard your yard. I think that's probably Jimmy Dykes. Our one-on-one ball handling defense could be a little bit more improved. When you had a guy like Colin Castleton or Micah Handlogden to just wipe off anything that comes at the rim, that's great. That's a luxury. But what about when those guys get in foul trouble? That can't be just the norm exception. It's rotations, it's effort, it's taking care of the basketball. You don't want to give up. It's not a lot you can do when you're allowing creating your own disadvantages, through turnovers. But defensively, yeah, you would like to see a team that can score a lot of points do a better job on defending. Um, like even when going against South Carolina, they couldn't stop Colin Murray-Boyles either. You got to figure out a way to slow down other teams' best players at minimum. So that is a little bit of a worry. That is but did a fantastic job against
Against Wade
A&M and
Taylor.
the whole and Wade
Yeah.
Taylor. Yeah, he was like 1 for 7, 1 for 8 from the 3-point line. Took him a while before he got his first basket. His game's weird. But look, Pharrell Payne was dominating. He was going after our bigs. So there's adjustments there everywhere. But defensively, this team's and they are in the top 10, I think, defensively or with adjustment. But I still think they need to be improved more. Yeah, just giving up too much points.
Yeah, the adjusted tempo you're talking about, I think on Ken Palm. I'm a numbers guy. I love the Ken Palmer and the Ken Pomeroy rankings. Florida actually is number 7 in the adjusted defensive rankings. So something to note there. It's not as bad as it sometimes seems, but then there are those games, and like we talked about, it's a 1-game season in the NCAA tournament. Well, in that one game, Kentucky puts 106 on you. Georgia shoots 79, 78% from three for a half, which is enough to win them that game. Missouri shoots the lights out. So one game could be the downfall of this Gator basketball team. But we like to think more positively. There's a lot this team does well. They do seem to be the best and most complete team that Florida's had since your senior season. So before we wrap up the show and talk about this team's outlook, I want to just get your thoughts on the overall state of Gator basketball because this team is special and I want to cherish it for as long as I can. But you know what? Florida's not going to have these guys next year. And Todd Golden's going to have to go right back out and recruit a new batch of them. So I think there's going to be a good foundation to build off of. I think Aberdeen can step into a larger role. I'd like to think that Thomas Houck and Alex Condon will both be back, but I could be wrong on that. So with that said, knowing that the players are going to change, do you think that Gator basketball is here to stay in terms of being nationally relevant? Do you think Todd Golden will have the Gators in the national title conversation this time of year more seasons than not?
It's hard for me to say. You want to be objective in making an opinion like that, but I guess you just got to look at the track record and see where this season ends up going. The better they do this season, the better it's going to be to get some good recruits as the season progresses. But there's no guarantee because again, every team, professional, college, you take a gamble every year on guys you think are going to work out, and it's not a guarantee that it's going to work out. So, and also, man, you as an organization, as a program, you got we now with how things have changed, you can have a bad season and flip it back over just like that. Look at Missouri. Look at Vanderbilt. Those programs, those teams are going to make the tournament. Obviously, that's not the Gator standard. Making the tournament is not the Florida standard. The standard is to be in soundly and to have a chance to win it all. So, yeah, how do you replace a guy like Walter Clayton? That's going to be Walter, Will, and
Martin.
Elijah.
Yeah.
Good thing is you got Denzel Aberdeen coming up next year in a senior season where he's going to be the alpha, but he's going to need help. So we'll see what these guys do recruiting wise.
Yeah, so we don't want to look ahead too much because we do have a few weeks more, hopefully a full month more to cherish this current team we've got. Let's talk outlook for the Gators basketball team this season. There's talk about a 1 seed. You lose to Georgia, that's clearly not going to help matters, but there still seems to be a logjam of teams who are fighting for the last 2. I think Duke and Auburn are pretty clearly going to get 2 of the 1 seeds, but then you got Houston, you got Florida, you got Tennessee, Alabama. If they beat Florida and they make a run in Nashville, could get themselves back in there. Do you think Florida deserves a 1 seed? And in your objective opinion, do you think that they can get themselves back into it after they seem to have fallen out of that?
The Georgia loss really didn't help a lot. I'm not sure. Deserve. I'm not sure that you want a 1 seed if you're Florida because it puts you in the West, which is very strange. a 2 seed. They might be a 2 seed in the South or the South or the East, which is a much better for Gator fans. Obviously, being able to want to travel there. You're gonna get matched up in the bracket with one of these 1 seed. I mean, it's inevitable, and nothing to fear. Hey, you beat Auburn this year in the jungle, so be afraid of no one. I just like the idea of being the 2 seed, so they possibly can get the South or the East. Better for the Gator fans. So, but you'll probably get matched up with Auburn or Duke in the bracket. But hey, take care of your path, control your fate.
Well, I do want to point out that there is a bracketing rule that I studied that I think is still in effect this year. I don't know that they're going to continue it moving forward, but as of this year, if you play a team twice in the regular season, so Florida and Auburn have played once, but if they play again in Nashville, that would be twice. If you play a team twice, you cannot meet them until the final four if chalk holds, meaning a one and a two cannot be put together. You could be an 11 seed and meet them if you play them twice because that's not chalk. But Florida, I don't think could be a two
Wow.
with Auburn if they're in the same pool or if they play again in Nashville. So there's a lot of
Huh.
crazy that goes in
Interesting.
there that would take them out of Atlanta, which is obviously the preferable location. Probably more likely would be Duke, which, I'd personally rather not see them until it's time to hoist a trophy at like the big one, not the regional one. I mean, the national channel one. But I guess that's just a conversation that's going to have to continue, and the Gators are going to have to keep providing data points between now and then that's going to determine their fate one way or another. So, Patrick, I know you're calling a game tonight. We're going to be respectful of your time. You've already given us an hour of it. So, let's wrap the show up by asking it fill in the blank style. The Florida Gators win the national championship if blank.
If they win the national championship, if they
Cop
stay
out.
healthy, uh, if they shoot win national championship, if they get a great matchup and bring their A game. I think when they bring their A game, they're better than anybody. When they're playing well, they are the best team in the country.
Yeah, I mean it. I guess I can throw one more postscript question on there too. What do you think of it being a one game season? Because we know from a fan perspective, the betting perspective, it's going to be unbelievably fun to watch these teams go head to head in a one game season. But do you think that's the best way to crown a champion, or would you rather see it be like a double elimination or just 2 out of 3 series or something? Or would you, as a former player, prefer it to be this way? Because we know it's going to stay this way for money. But what do you think as a former player?
I mean, I would like at least in the Final Four to be a series or something like that, even a round robin. I don't know, but yeah, one game. It is special. It is special just knowing it's all like every game is a surviving advance game. But um, I don't know, man. It'd be cool to see if there was a way to make it work, but it's just what we've been so accustomed to um, for so long, and I can't see it changing. Like I think we get 2 out of 3 games with UConn. We beat them 3 times. We beat them 2 out of those 3. They just got hot in that one game, and that's what they needed to do.
That 16-4 lead is going to haunt me forever as a fan. I'm sure it haunts you more as a former player that you had that lead and they just made that run at the end of the first half. And then that team, I think, was the best team we've had since the back-to-backs. Or maybe it's this team. We're gonna have to wait and see. We're gonna have to wait and see how the rest of the season plays out. But Patric Young, a part of one special Gator team in the recent past, talking about another special team we've got in our hands this season. We're gonna cherish every moment of it that we've got. And Patrick, we really cherish the time that you've given us today. We're very, very, very thankful for you giving us an hour of your time. Take care of yourself and
Take care,
hope to
man.
have you back.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Neil. Have a good one.
You as well.